Welcome to the Ordinary Doula Podcast with Angie Rozier, hosted by Birth Learning, where we help prepare folks for labor and birth with expertise coming from 20 years of experience in a busy doula practice, helping thousands of people prepare for labor, providing essential knowledge and tools for positive and empowering birth experiences.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Doula Podcast. My name is Angie Rozier. I am your host and we are sponsored by Birth Learning. Today we have an awesome guest with us. This is Dr. Katie Taylor. She lives and works in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. She's one of my favorite providers there, and I love sending clients to her. She is very knowledgeable in pelvic floor physical therapy, and we are going to talk today. I think this is a big issue. When I work with my clients, we talk about goals and fears and all kinds of things as we approach a labor and delivery. And so many people say, I don't want to tear. My biggest fear is tearing. I'm nervous about the pushing phase. And so I want to talk about how can we address and avoid or minimize the chance of tearing. And I've also found, and Katie, I want you to maybe speak to this. Hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot. But in my research too, in my data, as I've analyzed and looked at 15, 20 years of data, we honestly see, I saw anecdotally, and then I saw it in the numbers, in hospital and out of hospital, we have very different outcomes on tissue separation. So there's a lot of birth centers or home births I've been in where there's no stitching going on. There's no what they call lacerations, right? In the medical world, there's no tearing. And I have some guesses as to why. And in hospitals, I hear all the time, the providers are like, it's normal to tear. You're usually going to have a second degree tear. So I'd like you to address that maybe a little bit, but I'm going to let you, sorry, I kind of took off with some stuff there as I get excited about this, but please give us a little introduction and background and then dive into how people can avoid tissue separation in second stage, which is the pushing phase.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Dr. Katie Taylor. I'm a pelvic floor PT and mama and passionate women's health provider. I'm also someone sitting in apparently the midst of a fire truck going by. It's great.
So we might hear some sirens.
Apparently. So let's dive in. So yes, I commonly hear this from my patients. And when I teach our push prep class, that is one of the biggest fears that women have about birth is what it will be like when I push, and will I have tearing? What will it be like? How do I avoid it, etc. And so let's first touch on what exactly the perineal tissue is, grades of tears, and kind of understanding that, and then some evidence-based ways that we know that can help to prevent that. The perineum is the tissue between the vaginal opening and the rectum. It is a taut tissue in pre-pregnancy in women that have not had babies vaginally before. And it is a tissue that must stretch and expand during a vaginal delivery in order for baby to have exit out of what's called the pelvic outlet. And so when we think of tears, that is something that can happen. We grade it from grade 1 to grade 4. And that is a system that's really helps a provider, a medical provider, to know which tissue is affected. So grade 1 is a tear just in the basically opening of the vagina that does not require stitching, all the way to a grade 4 tear that goes from the vaginal opening up to that external anal sphincter muscle and then through to the other side. And so there are sort of a spectrum of things that we can kind of see with tearing, but it's important to note that there are things, and this is what I tell my patients to focus on, is not to be looking up grades of tears and what might happen, but is to focus on how I can be educated and know I have options and know there are things I can control and help to prevent my risk of perineal tearing. And so let's kind of talk about who is at risk, and again, what we can kind of do for that. So the first is first-time moms. So if you've had, if you're having your first pregnancy, and this is the first time that you've had your uterine tissue expand, pressure down into your pelvic floor, and that perineum hasn't been stretched in this way, that just is one of the things that we know can put women at risk. Having an instrument assisted delivery. So if we have a vacuum assisted, forcep assisted, which again, we'll talk about how we can kind of prevent that. That is one thing that does increase the risk of disruption in that tissue. Swelling and position are the next two things. So these two things are related. If we are in a delivery scenario where we have an epidural, we're on our back, we're not mobile, there's not as much circulation happening, we're going to be more at risk for swelling to develop in our whole pelvis, really, and not have as optimum circulation. And that position also doesn't allow the sacrum, so your tailbone actually moves up and out of the way as we are pushing baby. And when we're on our back, that simply can't happen as well. And so your position has a lot to do with how much pressure and ability the perineum has to stretch as we're doing that. And then related to that as well is pushing. So pushing phase and duration and how we push, which we'll talk about that in this, what I'm going to dive into next, which is like how we prevent perineal tears. So the idea that we want women to know is that we really want, and these things I should also just note, Angie, are recommended by ACOG, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists. I recommend them clinically when I see my patients. They do better when they kind of try their best to follow these things. And these are things that I encourage my patients, if we are having a hospital birth or we are birthing with an OB-GYN group, which is a perfectly fine option for many women to have, that we just need to have those conversations as much as we can in our prenatal visits. What will I be allowed to do in terms of my position with an epidural, without an epidural? How comfortable are you if I'm in hands and knees position? Have you delivered babies in hands and knees? What are you going to allow me to do to have access to warmth on my perineum when I'm pushing? Making it very clear that is your desire and what their thoughts and feedback are about that.
So this requires a little bit of pre-work, right, with your provider to address these things in a clinic visit.
Right. The more education, the more conversations that we have, the more that your birth team knows. So if it's you and your spouse, if it's you and your friend or family member, if you have a doula, really making sure that everyone is on the same page and knows to help support mom and back her up when we get to birth day. Yeah.
Cool.
So the idea of being in an upright or transverse position. So upright meaning my shoulders, head, torso are above my pelvis. So this can be standing, squatting. That can be, hands and knees even facing the head of the bed if you're on that. Being in a position where we have good blood supply and the ability of the perineum to expand is really key. If we have to be on our back for whatever reason, then placing two towels, so rolling up a towel and placing one under either side of your hips so that there's just a little bit of space between your tailbone and the hospital bed or the table, can still allow a little bit of movement of that tailbone upward, like I was describing earlier. The second is your idea of access to warmth. So just think of like how we might hear like, don't stretch a cold muscle, if you've heard that expression. The perineum is the same thing, right? It's going to be a lot easier for us to stretch and move and have good mobility if it's warm. So when you are in early stages of labor, get into the shower, get into the bath, be able to have access to a warm compress while you're pushing, asking a nurse or someone there to apply that. I think, Angie, to your point, if we look at hospital births and then we look at birthing centers, most women at some point, if we're at home or in a birthing center, are in a tub or in a shower, or we're not just checking in at the hospital and going right to the hospital bed. We've had time to warm that tissue up and move around, which is so, so helpful. So asking your provider when go time is so that you know, hey, if I start to have some contractions at home and my water hasn't broken, I'm going to get in the shower. I'm going to be upright. I'm going to let the warmth hit me. I'm going to have my partner get in there so we can sway together. Little things like that can really go a long way at helping to prepare your body and prepare that perineal tissue.
So even the things that we do in early labor can help prevent separation in second stage.
Right.
Okay. So it's a lot of prep, like a long time. It's not just moments before. We're working on it a long time before. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I love what you said. You're making a lot of sense as to the reasons why we see less tissue separation or tearing in out of hospital settings. There's a lot more mobility. Obviously, there's no epidurals going on. And people, they do have, I think, access, yes, tubs for sure, tubs and showers, and then mobility and pushing positions are very much, the providers that deliver out of hospital are very open to a variety of pushing positions.
Right. Yes.
There's a few reasons. Okay. That helps. It all makes sense.
And, I do have patients who, I think more often, more with maybe the younger generation of OB-GYNs, they're coming back and saying, hey, I had my epidural and he let me push on my hands and knees, like as long as I wanted to. So just know that
I've seen that. It's been a long time since I can think back and think a client I had with an epidural that we could not get on hands and knees. Like it has to be super heavy epidural, like where the mobility is not there. But I would say if we have clients that have epidurals, we're still getting on hands and knees at some point.
Yeah.
Might be during pushing, might be during labor.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I guess playing devil's advocate though, is that unfortunately I still have patients on a regular basis come in and say, and this is, they're like 32-week visit that they're asking this, and they're being told maybe by a more old school physician, you will have your baby on your back, and just being very black and white with it. So just know all that to
absolutely
kind of go in and just say, you will be told most likely at some point that you will be in one position. And I have had patients go so far as to print off the ACOG position statement and take it with them to a visit and say, this is not evidence-based. You need to give me a very good medical reason why I need to be on my back and I can't be on my side, or I can't be on my hands and knees, or I can't be in whatever position, because that's just not
absolutely. And I see that's a question as I prepare folks as a doula. I have some talking points to take to providers, and that's absolutely one of them. And you used a word that I use as well, and I kind of hate that we have to use this word, allowed. Like, what positions will I be allowed to give birth in? It should be the choice of the person giving birth. But you're right. There's providers who, and honestly, it goes down to their training. Like, they have never seen a baby delivered in any other position, because that on their back position is incredibly convenient to them, right? The bed breaks down for them. The stool is the right height where they can sit and be comfortable. They have access to everything they think they need access to. And so a lot of them, they feel like they lose control if the person's in a different birthing position. So I think, but just like you, I see the tide changing, especially with midwives. I'm seeing incredibly awesome birthing positions that are quote unquote allowed, because I think the person giving birth should be allowed to make that decision. And they don't know a lot of times till they're in the moment, like what's going to be most comfortable. But I think that prep work, that awareness and that education ahead of time, plant those seeds so that they can make good decisions.
So much. Yes. Yeah. And, I think the last main way when we think of preventing perineal tears is perineal massage and mobilizing that tissue ahead of delivery. And so this is something that we recommend starting at 30 weeks. I used to have it be later, but now we have some new research that tells us that, doing that earlier would be more optimal. And that is something that we teach in our push prep program. We have an online push prep program that's an on-demand class that we really walk through and help demonstrate and understand how you can do that. Mamas on your own body, you can have partner assist you with that. And that's something that we really find is helpful to stretch and get that tissue used to contact, used to being stretched and can really help to prepare it for the day of delivery as well.
Okay, awesome. So you teach people to do that on their own too?
Yes. Yeah. We definitely
Excellent.
do it in our visits together. And if you see a pelvic floor physical therapist or occupational therapist, they can teach you, do on you as a form of treatment ahead of time, ahead of when you're pregnant before delivery. But there's lots of good ways that we could teach women to do that at home several days a week for several weeks leading up to delivery as well. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. I love that. So tell me about, so often we see, and I love your comments on movement during pushing for circulation, blood flow, and
Yeah.
avoiding swelling. So very commonly, if we have a primip, somebody having their first baby, we expect them or anticipate perhaps they'll push 1 to 3 hours. And we know, like, as the baby works through the pelvis, as we move and provide options and pelvic opening for that baby, then it's going to shorten that time usually. But when someone's pushing for 3 hours and perhaps they have an epidural, we know traditional hospital pushing is to hold your breath for 10 seconds, 3 times per contraction. How can you speak to that? And when we're in a traditional push setting for 1 to 3 hours with an epidural, how can we work with that?
Help with that? Yeah, great
Yes.
question. So I would first start off by saying we need to encourage moms to labor down. That is not something that's offered at most clinics and hospitals, but you are most often allowed to do that for up to an hour. Laboring down is when you have a cervical check, you're 10 centimeters dilated, but you do not push. So
and this is folks with an epidural.
Yes. You get a contraction. So we see that nice little bell-shaped curve, and you get into the best position you can, and you're still trying to just relax. And so what we're doing is we're using those uterine contractions to go through a soft, dilated cervix and allow baby to work down as much as we can before we push. Really asking that, again, that's on my list of questions in your prenatal visits, is how long will you allow me to labor down? As long as baby is stable and you are stable, don't push until you feel ready to push.
Okay.
That's number one.
So you said an hour. And I've seen people do it 1, 2, 3 hours. And let me clarify, you're talking about people with epidurals or people without
anybody.
epidurals?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time, epidural or non-epidural, you're allowed at hospitals to do that.
Right.
And it's a matter of, again, I'll PC kind of say, like, a lot of times you're on this like timetable and we're not wanting to kind of just like pause labor to let it progress and all the things. And so that's why I encourage women to ask about it in their prenatal visit. So it's not a surprise to us day one, what the expectation and rules are for that particular provider and that particular hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So to speak to that, you're bringing up some questions for me. When people have epidurals, I see a lot of laboring down. It's also called rest and descend in some facilities. And sometimes it's 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours. It's kind of when we have a medicated mom, it's kind of whenever the staff is ready to come in and deliver a baby, right? And whatever they've got going on out there. So the time varies, and the mom remains, right? And in my mind, I'm like, let's keep moving. Let's, before we get to active pushing. So then folks without epidurals, I see something very different where I think so many hospitals, the pattern is 10 centimeters equals push. Like, we're going to set up the cart. We're going to get the staff in here. The nurse is going to be with you. We're going to do that counted pushing. So what you're saying is like, let's ask for that rest and descend or labor down time, even without epidurals.
Oh, even more so. If you don't have an epidural and you're able to stay really upright and active, heck yeah, let's get that.
And then what about the women who get this incredibly strong urge to push at 9 centimeters, at 10 centimeters? Do we spend an hour breathing through those contractions?
Yeah. So I tell my patients, in those prenatal visits, we kind of say, okay, here's all the possibilities of what might happen. You might be one of those moms that gets a primal urge to just bear down and push when you have reached 10 centimeters, or like you said, maybe even 9. And that's okay. Like, listening to our bodies and doing that baby might be just lower descended. We want to be able to listen to our body's natural responses to labor. And so for many women, I think the kind of getting into that second piece here is that we really have, for first-time moms especially, some women have that innate ability to sort of bear down and push and relax our pelvic floor, and some women don't. We just we clench our bellies, or we hold our breath and we think we're pushing, but we're not actually doing that. And so that's another benefit of the prenatal care, is that we can really make sure your pelvic floor knows how to relax, knows how to descend in a way that we are being effective. And that really shortens that labor down, the active push phase of labor. Because if
so baby gets lower, right? So by the time we're actively pushing, we have less distance, if you will.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Or even more so with our, like, we have a contraction, we're pushing, each push is more effective because we're actually pushing and descending.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I would say that would be like another plug for just prenatal care, is that you really learning how to, like I said, I call it pushing mechanics, but just like how we push, is that when we practice pushing in pregnancy, because we do I actually feel a descent? Are you actually relaxing? Or do you think you're relaxing and you're actually tensing? Those things really matter and can all, again, shorten the labor, the stage 2 labor process.
So I love that you said, like, listen to your body, because I see a lot of different pathways people are on. Yes. Some people do like have this, you can not push, like it's such an incredibly strong reaction, right? And they get to 9 or 10 centimeters and their body starts pushing. But I also have folks who, I've heard this many times, where so some people, I think in that category just mentioned, it's like a relief. It feels right. It's a sensation change that it's good timing. And then I have other people who were, as traditional in hospitals, 10 centimeters equals push, unmedicated usually. And they're like, that didn't feel good. That was the worst part. I didn't feel ready. So you're saying, take the time, be patient, and wait till your body feels that natural urge to push.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. Perfect. I think that needs to be reiterated. I see it in my work all the time, that we have some work to do in that area.
Yes. Yeah, I know. And I think the last thing I would just add is that, the idea of, I think you had mentioned this earlier, but like open glottis breathing versus, Valsalva, or holding your breath, there's actually, which so shocks me, there's not good data to support open glottis breathing. There's just not a clinically significant difference when we look at the studies who have looked at both. But I'm just here to tell you, the women who are birthing on their back and being told to hold their breath and being told to just count and hold and hold and hold and hold are the ones that end up with a prolapse and end up with more perineal tears.
Okay. And so that force, that added force has ramifications.
I mean, it's just like, if you were to hold your breath and push as hard as you can, that puts so much downward pressure into the pelvic floor and puts strain on the pelvic organs, and will put you at more of a risk of a pelvic organ prolapse. And I have this, if y'all could just visualize those little toy chickens that have a ball that you squeeze and like the egg comes down out of the bottom of the chicken. Yeah. That's what happens to your perineum. I mean, that's the only place it has to go, versus if we activate our vocal cords, which is what that refers to in a hum or a ha breath, as we push,
like moan,
that is so much more correlated to pelvic floor descent and relaxing. And so I tell my patients, I'm very open. I'm saying, you will be told to hold your breath, most likely. And you will say, no, I'm going to choose to do this style of breathing until I have a medical reason not to. And that's just another one of those things that knows, like, I have options. Even when I'm being told something, you're telling your birth people ahead of time, hey, if they tell me to hold my breath and I forget, or hey, if you see me holding my breath, like, snap out of it and try to do your breath work as much as you can. And that makes a big difference.
Okay. I love it. So tell us a little bit more about your push prep class. As we talked offline about this, you said it incorporates so many things, and breathing is one of them, which I love. So tell us a little about this push prep class, what it entails, where to find it, how long, like what's the duration of the class? What, if people get this class, what are they looking at? What's their time and money investment too?
Yeah, love it. So we have a push prep class that I've taught at our clinic for really years now. And so we have really found that over time, we were getting more inquiries for women that just weren't local to us. And there's really not a good option for women in that online space to have a pelvic floor therapist who knows what they're talking about in terms of obstetrics and to do that. So we started an online version. We created it's called Thrive by Taylor Wellness. And as part of that, we have a whole section on pregnancy and postpartum There are prenatal yoga and core workouts. We have a lot of information that we've talked about today, and more on there on perineal massage. And so there's just a lot of good resources. And then one of the other courses that's part of Thrive is our push prep program. And so push prep is there's lots of videos, lots of those bonus workouts that are on there going through a lot more in depth than we have here on stages of labor. There's one of the modules that goes through questions to ask your OB, like I've talked about today.
Yeah.
And the actual stages of labor and pictures of those and videos of that content as well. So that is something that you can find more information on our website about. We have information on our social media pages about, and Thrive has a separate website as well. And so we give moms an option, or give women an option, because we do have a wonderful community that comes with your Thrive membership on Facebook. So we can connect on that platform as well. That's been really lovely. And so women can do that monthly. They can have a 6-month or even a 12-month membership to that. And we're hoping, I was just telling Angie this before we started recording, that our hope is within the next week or two to be able to have the push prep be just a standalone option as well. But lots and lots of good resources on there.
So we'll have a link to Thrive in our show notes. So please go check that out. That is awesome. So Katie, I have maybe I'd love any final thoughts from you, but I have a question. In your estimation, if people prepare well, if they have a supportive provider and support, if they've done the work ahead of time, and are supported during labor, what is the potential for avoiding tissue separation and tearing altogether? Like, if you were to give a percentage of 100 women have babies, how many can we expect to have tissue separation if we're in a perfect pelvic floor world?
Ooh, what a
like how normal should it be?
That's a hard question.
I know.
It's so hard. So I would say if we had 100 women and they all could stand up and be active, they all had access to heat and water and were active and had good doula and support from their providers to breathe and push and do all the things. I mean, I would love to think that 90+% could have a great birth without having tearing. I think occasionally we'll see women that just from a tissue perspective, just first time moms, just, tension, all the things might have tears, but I find those women that fit that scenario, if they tear, they aren't our grade 3-4 tears. They're
so we can minimize tearing.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Cool. And I know some people have a longer perineal body than others, like some it's quite short, some is long. So like you mentioned before, some comes down to genetics, but there are so many things that we can do, right? Actions we can take, preparation we can make to avoid that. Yeah. And I think that awareness, again, like people are not aware that they have some control over that. There's some things in their power. So that is excellent to know. Any final thoughts about avoiding tissue separation or tearing in second stage? Anything you want to close up
mamas, just try your very best to focus on the variables you can control. Try not to play the what if games. And then even say to yourself, like, even if I do tear, there's so much that I can do to help my body heal postpartum, that I don't want that to be a source of stress and anxiety. I want it to be something that instead we're focusing on the empowerment and education that we can have control over in pregnancy, and the advocacy that we can have for ourselves come the day of delivery, because that can make a big, big difference.
Okay, awesome. And I think it's helpful, like vital almost, to know that this is some pre-work, whether it's conversations, your own preparations, you do have things in your control, which is good to know.
Yes.
Before and after, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Dr. Katie Taylor, thank you so much for being with us today and imparting a lot of your knowledge and wisdom. Thanks for providing this Thrive membership for people, which is a great resource. And we will have that, again, that link will be in our show notes. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So this is Angie Rozier. We're signing off from the Ordinary Doula Podcast. We hope to see you next time. Go out and connect with someone that you love or a stranger. Make a good human connection today and see what that does for your life and health. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Ordinary Doula Podcast with Angie Rozier, hosted by Birth Learning. Episode credits will be in the show notes. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many aspects of giving birth.